I used to believe that taking care of your parents was the purest act of love, a way to repay them for all the sacrifices they made. When you were too young to understand what sacrifice even meant. My name is Amira, and for the last 3 years, I've been sending my parents $1,000 every single week. It wasn't charity, at least not in my eyes. It was my duty, my gratitude in tangible form. When I first got my promotion at work, I called my parents before I even told my husband. My father's voice cracked with pride, and my mother cried, saying she knew I'd make something of myself. I promised them right then that I'd take care of everything, the bills, the medications, the groceries, all of it. They had worked themselves to the bone raising me and my siblings, and now, finally, it was my turn to make their lives easier. At first, it felt good. Every Friday, like clockwork, I'd transfer the money to my parents' account. Mom would message me with heart emojis, thanking me and saying things like, "You're our blessing, Amira. Because of you, we can finally live without worry." My father would sometimes send a simple thumbs up emoji, his quiet way of saying he appreciated it, but sending that money came with a price, one I didn't fully realize at first. My husband, Rafi, was supportive in the beginning. He admired my loyalty to my parents. "It's a beautiful thing you're doing," he told me once as we went over our monthly expenses. But as months turned into years and the $1,000 became a fixed part of our budget, cracks began to form. We started cutting corners. Rafi stopped talking about buying a new car, even though ours rattled every time we drove uphill. When our daughter Lena asked if we could go to the amusement park, I had to tell her, "Maybe next month, sweetie." Next month never came. I told myself it was temporary, that my parents needed help more than we needed fun. Our weekends turned quieter. Rafi and I used to go out for dinner once a week, but we started cooking at home to save money. He never complained, but I could see the tension in his jaw when I'd bring up my parents' needs. "They can't manage their expenses?" he asked once, his tone careful but edged with frustration. "I thought their house was paid off." I brushed it off. "You know how it is, Rafi. There's always something, repairs, medicine, electricity bills. They're old. I don't want them worrying about money." He nodded but didn't look convinced. Still, I didn't question it. I trusted my parents completely. My mother would sometimes tell me about how the prices of groceries were going up, or how Dad's blood pressure medicine was getting more expensive. It made sense. Life was costly, and they were retired. But beneath my pride in being the responsible daughter was a quiet exhaustion. I worked overtime regularly to keep up with the expenses, often missing family dinners. I told myself it was for the greater good. Every time Lena asked why I was late, I'd kiss her forehead and say, "Mommy's working hard so Nana and Dada can live comfortably." She'd nod. Though she didn't really understand, deep down, I think I wore my sacrifice like a badge of honor. I liked believing I was doing something noble. My parents would often remind me of that too. "Not everyone takes care of their elders like you do," Mom would say. "Your siblings should learn from you." Those words fueled me, made me feel like I was doing the right thing. Even when it hurt, I didn't realize then that sacrifice without awareness can be a dangerous thing. Love can blind you just as easily as hate can, because while I was breaking my back to support my parents, while my husband and daughter quietly shouldered the cost of my devotion, somewhere along the way, my parents had stopped needing my help. And soon, I would find out just how deep that deception went. The weeks blurred into months, and the months quietly folded into years. What began as a loving gesture to help my parents slowly became an unshakable obligation, woven into the fabric of my life. Every Friday morning, I'd wake up, open my banking app, and send $1,000 to my parents' account, before paying our own bills. It became as natural as breathing, but the air in our own home started to grow heavy. Rafi tried to stay patient. He never shouted or made me feel guilty, not directly. But I could sense the quiet tension in the way he reviewed our finances every month. He'd sit at the dining table with his laptop, a deep crease between his brows, murmuring to himself as he scrolled through expenses. Sometimes he'd sigh and glance at me, as if debating whether to say something or keep the peace. One evening, after Lena had gone to bed, he finally did. "Amira," he said gently, "I know your parents mean the world to you, and I respect that, but do they really need that much every week?" $1,000 it's for their bills and medical stuff, I interrupted quickly, defensive. "You know Dad's health isn't great?" He nodded, hesitating. "I understand that. But maybe you could ask them for a breakdown? Just to make sure they're okay and that it's being used where it should be?" I frowned. "You think my parents would lie to me?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "No, I just think it's a lot of money. And lately we've been struggling too. You've been skipping lunches, working late. Lena's outgrown her clothes, and I've been pushing off that car repair for months." I wanted to listen. I really did. But a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that questioning my parents would make me a bad daughter. I hated how he made me think about it, how it made me feel torn between my loyalty and my responsibility. So I said the only thing that came to mind. "They sacrificed everything for me, Rafi. This is the least I can do." He didn't argue after that. He just nodded quietly, picked up his laptop, and went to bed. At work, I began taking on extra shifts, just until we're ahead again. But we never really got ahead. There was always something new. Mom would call about a leaking roof or a broken washing machine. Dad needed another round of medication. It was always urgent, always serious, and I always sent more if they asked. Meanwhile, my own home started showing cracks, literal and emotional. Our water heater stopped working one winter, and Rafi had to borrow from his savings to fix it. Lena started noticing things too. One night, she tugged at my sleeve and asked, "Mama, why don't we ever go to the beach like my friends do?" I forced a smile. "We'll go soon, sweetie. Mommy's just saving right now." She pouted. "Saving for what?" I hesitated. "For Nana and Dada." Her small face scrunched in confusion. "But don't they already have a big house?" That question stung more than I expected. Despite the growing doubts around me, I clung to my image of the perfect daughter, the provider, the caregiver. My parents fed that image too. My mother often reminded me how proud she was, how I was the only one who truly understood family. "Your brothers send nothing," she'd sigh over the phone. "If it weren't for you, I don't know how we'd survive." Those words were like hooks. They pulled me deeper into guilt and devotion. Each compliment felt like validation, a reason to ignore the small voice in my head whispering that something wasn't right. But Rafi wasn't fooled anymore. One evening, when another urgent call came from my mom, he simply said, "You know, Amira, love doesn't mean you have to drain yourself dry." I snapped at him then, told him he'd never understand because his parents were already gone. The look of hurt in his eyes haunted me for days. Still, I didn't stop. I told myself that if I just worked a little harder, saved a little more, it would all be worth it. That one day, when my parents were truly comfortable, we could focus on our own dreams again. But deep down, something inside me knew that day might never come, and soon, the cracks I had ignored for years were about to split wide open, all because of a single birthday party. It was a Sunday afternoon when I first noticed something that didn't quite add up. I was scrolling through social media, absent-mindedly liking pictures of coworkers' kids and family dinners, when a photo from my mother popped up on my feed. She and my father were sitting in what looked like a high-end restaurant, chandeliers, wine glasses, tablecloths crisp and white. The caption read, "Finally treating ourselves. We deserve a little luxury now and then." At first, I smiled. They looked happy. For a moment, I even felt proud that my money allowed them such small joys. But as I lingered on the photo, something twisted inside me. Just 2 days earlier, my mother had called crying about how their electric bill had doubled and how they barely had enough left for groceries. I had transferred an extra $400 that same evening. I shook off the unease, telling myself maybe someone had treated them, maybe a friend, maybe a neighbor. But then, a few days later, another photo appeared. This time, they were standing outside a new furniture store, posing in front of a brand new sofa set. The caption, Finally replaced the old one. It was about time. That's when the doubt began to settle in. I decided to ask casually on our next call. "Mom," I said, trying to sound light, "I saw your pictures. That new sofa looks really nice. Did you get a good deal?" There was a brief pause, and then her voice brightened, too quickly. "Oh, that. Yes, we got it secondhand from a friend. Hardly paid anything." Something about her tone didn't sit right. I hesitated. "Oh, okay. That's good. I was just wondering, since you said things were tight lately." "Well, yes, they are," she said sharply, her cheer fading. "You know how expensive everything is these days? We're barely managing as it is." The conversation shifted after that, but the doubt stayed. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing patterns. Every time I offered to pay something directly, their utility bill, their property tax, even my dad's prescriptions, my mother would gently refuse. "Oh no. Sweetheart, we already handled it," she'd say. "The landlord doesn't take online payments. The clinic prefers cash. The bank system is down. Just send it to me instead." Always an excuse. Always some reason to keep me from sending money to anyone but her. When I told Rafi, he frowned but stayed quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Amira," he said, "I know you don't want to believe it, but something's off. Maybe they're embarrassed, or maybe they're hiding something. But you should find out where that money's really going." I felt defensive, almost angry. "You're making it sound like they're stealing from me." "They're my parents." He raised his hands. "I'm not saying that. But even parents can make mistakes. You've been carrying them for years. Don't you deserve some honesty?" I didn't answer. I didn't want to. The next week, Mom called again, sounding anxious. "Amira, your father's car broke down. We need a little extra to fix it." Something inside me snapped. "But Mom, I thought you said you rarely drive anymore? You told me you were thinking of selling the car." Silence. Then a small, nervous laugh. "Oh, well, we changed our minds. You know your dad, he can't sit still." I sent the money anyway, but after that call, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being kept in the dark. I started checking their social media more often, noticing the small luxuries, new clothes, new furniture, expensive dinners. Each time I tried to reason it away. Maybe they were getting discounts. Maybe my brothers had finally started helping. Maybe I was overthinking. Still, the unease grew stronger, heavier. Even Lena noticed my distracted mood one night and asked, "Mama, are you sad?" I smiled weakly. "No, honey, just tired." But in truth, I wasn't just tired. I was doubting everything I thought I knew, and I had no idea that soon all those little doubts would explode into something undeniable, something that would change how I saw my parents forever, because their next big appearance, the one that would finally reveal the truth, was going to happen at my daughter's birthday party. Lena's 7th birthday was approaching, and she had been counting down the days for weeks. Every morning she'd announce, "Only 10 days left," or, "Mama, can we have a pink cake this year?" Her excitement was contagious, even if my heart carried a quiet heaviness these days. I wanted her day to be special, simple, but full of love. We couldn't afford anything extravagant. Not after the latest emergency payment to my parents. But I promised Lena we'd make her favorite food, invite a few of her school friends, and have balloons everywhere. Rafi offered to handle most of the arrangements this time, saying gently, "You've done enough running around. Amira, just relax and enjoy the day." Still, I wanted to make sure my parents were there. They hadn't seen Lena in months, and despite the unease growing in my chest, I still longed for their presence. Maybe seeing them in person, hugging them, talking face to face, would ease my doubts. Maybe I'd realize I'd been overthinking everything. So, one evening I called my mom. "Ma, we're having a little party for Lena on Sunday. Just something small at home, some friends, some food. Can you and Dad come?" There was a pause before her voice brightened. "Of course, sweetheart. We wouldn't miss our granddaughter's birthday. Actually..." She hesitated for a second. "We've been planning a little surprise for her. Something she'd never forget." Her excitement sounded genuine, and I smiled despite myself. That's so sweet, Ma. You don't have to do anything too fancy, though. It's just a small celebration. Oh, nonsense, she said, laughing. You just focus on your little party. We'll take care of the rest. The week before the party, Raffi and I spent every spare moment decorating the living room and yard. We hung paper garlands, inflated dozens of balloons, and baked cookies that Lena helped decorate with messy little hands. But even as I tied ribbons and wrapped gifts, a small voice in the back of my mind kept whispering, "What surprise? What could they possibly afford right now?" I tried to dismiss it. I wanted so badly for things to feel normal, for this one day to be about family. Not money. 2 days before the party, my mother called again. "Sweetheart, do you mind if we bring a few friends? Just your Uncle Kamal and his wife. They haven't seen Lena since she was a baby." I hesitated, then agreed. "Sure, Ma, the more the merrier." Raffi raised an eyebrow when I told him. "Your parents are bringing guests now?" "They're family," I said quickly. "And they're bringing a surprise for Lena. Let's just be happy they're coming." He didn't argue, but his silence said enough. The morning of the party arrived bright and warm. Lena woke up early, bouncing on the bed, squealing about her presents. I helped her put on the pink dress she'd picked out weeks ago and did her hair with glittery clips. She looked like a little princess. By noon, the house was full of laughter and noise. Kids ran through the yard with confetti poppers. The smell of food filled the air, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. That was until Raffi nudged me and said softly, "Your parents are here." I turned toward the window and froze. A shiny black car had just pulled up in front of our modest home. My parents stepped out slowly, dressed better than I'd ever seen them. My mother wore a flowing designer dress and diamond earrings that caught the sunlight. My father had on a crisp shirt, gold watch glinting at his wrist. They looked like they were attending a gala, not a backyard birthday. For a moment, I couldn't move. Raffi's hand found mine. "Amira," he whispered, "that's a new car, isn't it?" I swallowed hard. I don't know. But I did know. I knew the old blue sedan they'd complained about constantly didn't exist anymore. I knew something was deeply, terribly wrong, and as they walked toward us with wide smiles and expensive-looking gift bags, I felt the first true crack in the illusion I had been clinging to for years. They had promised a special surprise. I just didn't realize the surprise would be the truth itself, wrapped in gold and gilt, waiting to be unwrapped before everyone I loved. The sound of car doors closing snapped me out of my daze. My parents stood at the edge of the driveway, both beaming, waving as if they were celebrities stepping onto a red carpet. My mother's voice carried across the yard, bright and confident. "Sweetheart! Look at you. Oh, everything looks so beautiful." The guests turned to watch as my parents approached, their polished appearance drawing quiet glances. I tried to smile, tried to silence the voice in my head that whispered, "They said they were struggling last week." Lena ran toward them, her face lighting up. "Nana, Dada," she squealed, throwing her arms around my mother's waist. My mom bent down, kissing her cheek. "Happy birthday, my precious girl," she cooed. "We brought you something very special." Behind them, 2 more people stepped out of the car, my Uncle Kamal and Aunt Farah, both dressed just as elegantly. My uncle held a box wrapped in metallic paper, large enough to make every child at the party stop what they were doing to stare. Raffi came up beside me, his expression unreadable. "That doesn't look like a small surprise," he murmured. I could only nod. My throat dried inside. The house buzzed with energy. My parents greeted everyone as if they were the guests of honor, laughing, complimenting the decorations, showering Lena with attention. I tried to keep my composure, offering drinks and chatting politely. But the unease in my stomach grew heavier with every passing minute. Then, when everyone gathered around the cake table, my mother clapped her hands dramatically. Wait. "Before we cut the cake," she said with a proud smile, "we have something for our little angel." Uncle Kamal lifted the big box and set it on the floor. The children gasped. Lena's eyes widened as my father helped her tear off the wrapping paper. Inside was a brand new tablet, the latest model, complete with a stylus and colorful case. My mom beamed. Now you can draw, study, and play games all in one place. Just like your cousins. Lena squealed with delight, hugging her grandparents. Thank you, Nana. Thank you, Dada. Applause filled the room, but my hands stayed frozen at my sides. I glanced at Rafi, whose lips were pressed in a thin line, later. When the guests began eating and the music filled the air, I found a quiet moment to pull my mother aside near the kitchen. Ma, I said softly, forcing a smile, that was very generous of you. But how could you afford such an expensive gift? You told me last week you barely had money for groceries. For a brief moment, her eyes flickered, a tiny crack in her cheerful facade. Then she laughed lightly, waving her hand. Oh, Amira, don't worry about that. We got it on sale. Your father found a great deal? A sale? I repeated skeptically. On a brand new tablet? She stiffened slightly. Don't interrogate me on your daughter's birthday, sweetheart. We just wanted to make her happy. Her words stung. I forced a nod and stepped back, but inside, my thoughts were spinning as the afternoon wore on. Little things started to catch my attention. My father's gold watch wasn't the same one I remembered. This one gleamed too brightly, too new. My mother's handbag bore a designer logo that cost more than a month's rent. Even the car keys dangling from my dad's pocket had a sleek emblem, BM. I stared at them, my heart pounding. The realization hit me slowly, painfully. They hadn't just been managing better. They had been thriving, living a life I couldn't afford while I worked overtime to support them. When I finally sat down beside Rafi, he leaned close and whispered, Do you still think they're struggling? I didn't answer. I couldn't because deep down, I knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was the beginning of an ugly truth. I had spent years refusing to see and by the end of that day, that truth would no longer hide behind smiles or fancy gifts. It would come spilling out in front of everyone. The party was in full swing, laughter, music, and children's giggles filled the air. To anyone watching, it was a perfect family celebration. But inside, I felt like I was standing in a fog. Every sound seemed distant, every smile rehearsed. I kept glancing at my parents, the way my father's watch sparkled in the light, the way my mother's bracelets clinked when she lifted her glass of juice. I wanted so badly to believe there was an explanation. Maybe they'd received some inheritance I didn't know about. Maybe a friend had lent them the car. Anything but the thought that they'd been lying to me all this time, but the truth was inching closer, waiting for a moment to slip out, and it did. Sooner than I expected. After the cake cutting, the adults gathered on the patio. My father sat with a group of relatives and neighbors, laughing heartily, his cheeks flushed from the drink in his hand. My mother was busy bragging about Lena's grades, her voice rising proudly with every word. I joined them halfway through a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. So? Rashid, Uncle Kamal was saying, how's the new property? Still planning to rent it out? I froze. Property? My father grinned, swirling his glass. Yes. The tenants moved in last month. Nice young couple. It's good income, The real estate market's been kind to us lately. My stomach dropped. My mother's laughter rang out too loud, too sharp. Oh, Rashid, don't bore them with business talk. Let's not make Amira's party about that. But it was too late. Every word after that blurred around me. The patio spun slightly as I stared at my father, waiting for him to correct himself. To say it was a joke, a misunderstanding. But he didn't. He leaned back, satisfied, and started talking about renovations and property taxes, like a man comfortable with money. My chest tightened when my mother noticed me standing there. Her smile faltered for the first time that day. Sweetheart, she said quickly, come sit, have something to drink. I forced a smile and sat, but my pulse was pounding in my ears. I couldn't focus on anything else, not the music, not the laughter, not Lena's delighted squeals in the background. My father kept talking, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. He said proudly, the hardest part was the down payment. But we manage. We've been saving well these last few years. Saving. The word hit me like a slap. Saving, while I'd been skipping lunch to meet deadlines. while Rafi worked weekends to keep our household afloat. While I sent them $4,000 every month out of love and duty, I felt my throat tighten. "You bought a property?" I asked, my voice quieter than I expected. My father blinked at me, his face softening in confusion. "Oh, well, yeah, sort of. Just a small investment." I turned to my mother. "You told me last week you couldn't pay your electricity bill." The table fell silent. My father cleared his throat, glancing at her nervously. My mother's lips trembled before she forced a laugh. "Oh, Amira, you're making a scene. Let's talk about this later, okay?" "Not now? Why not now?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Why didn't you just tell me?" The relative shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to listen but clearly hanging on every word. My father mumbled something about not wanting to burden me with details, but the damage was done. The air around us had changed. The perfect image of my generous parents, the ones I'd sacrificed everything for, was cracking, and beneath it was something cold. Selfish and deeply dishonest. Rafi stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Let it go for now," he whispered. "We'll talk later." But I couldn't let it go. "Not anymore." I forced a smile for the guests, excused myself, and went inside, my heart hammering, my mind spinning with questions. How long had this been going on? What else had they lied about? And most painfully, why hadn't I seen it sooner? Because deep down, I already knew this wasn't just about money. This was about trust, and how the people I trusted most had turned that trust into their personal paycheck. And before the night was over, that betrayal would only grow deeper until there was no pretending left. The night after the party, the house felt painfully quiet. The decorations still hung limply on the walls. Deflated balloons scattered across the floor, ghosts of a celebration that now felt hollow. Rafi had tucked Lena into bed, and I sat alone at the kitchen table. Staring at my phone, I must have replayed that conversation on the patio 100 times. "We've been saving well these last few years." Those words echoed like a cruel joke. Saving on my money, I scrolled through my messages with my mother, rereading her pleas for help, the ones that had made me empty my account over and over. "We can't afford Dad's medicine this month. Our heater broke. The landlord is threatening eviction." Lies, every single one of them. I didn't want to believe it. But the sight of their luxury car, designer clothes, and brand new jewelry wouldn't leave my mind. The truth had been sitting in plain sight all along. That night I called my mother. She answered on the third ring, her voice too casual. "Amira, sweetheart. I was just telling your father how wonderful the party was. Lena's growing up so fast." "Mom," I interrupted, my voice low but sharp. "Who paid for the car?" Silence, then a small, nervous laugh. "Oh, that old thing. We just leased it. You know, your father likes to keep up appearances." "I saw the key, Mom. It's brand new." "And Uncle Kamal mentioned the property. You told me you could barely afford groceries last week." Her tone changed instantly, the softness gone, replaced by a brittle edge. "Why are you interrogating me like this?" "We didn't do anything wrong." "Didn't do anything wrong?" I snapped. "I've been sending you $1,000 every week for years. I worked overtime, I skipped things for my own daughter so you could be comfortable." "And you've been buying property? Cars?" I heard her sigh, not of guilt, but of irritation. "Amira, calm down. You're overreacting. We just wanted to live a little after all those hard years." "We earned that right." My chest tightened. "Earned it? With my money?" There was a pause. Then her voice hardened. "Don't speak to me like that. We raised you, fed you, educated you. You think a few dollars makes up for that?" "You owe us." Those words hit harder than anything else could have. "I owe you?" I whispered, my hands trembling. "Mom, I never sent that money because I owed you. I did it because I loved you, because I wanted to help. But you lied to me. You made me feel guilty every time I questioned where it went." My father's voice suddenly came on the line, stern and defensive. "Enough, Amira. You're disrespecting your mother. We didn't force you to send money. You offered. If you regret it now, that's on you." My throat burned. "You're right. I did offer, but you let me believe you were struggling. You manipulated me with stories about bills and health problems. You took advantage of my love. My mother's voice cracked, just slightly. We just wanted a better life, Amira. Is that so wrong? After all we've done for you? I felt something in me break, that fragile bond of trust I had been clinging to for so long. You could have told me the truth, I said quietly. But instead you turned me into your ATM. For a long moment no one spoke. Then my mother said coldly, maybe if you were a better daughter, you'd understand why we did what we did. That was the last thing she said before hanging up. I sat there for hours, staring at my reflection in the dark window, a woman who had given everything out of love, only to be rewarded with deceit. Rafi found me there, tears silently streaming down my face. He didn't say, I told you so. He just held me. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The guilt that had ruled my life for years began to fade, replaced by a quiet, painful clarity. My parents hadn't needed my help. They had used it. And the worst part was, they didn't even feel sorry. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my mother's voice again. You owe us. The words throbbed in my chest like a wound that wouldn't close. By morning, my decision was made. Rafi didn't argue when I said I needed to go see them. He just nodded, quietly supportive, though I could see the worry in his eyes. Don't let them twist it again, he said softly, handing me the car keys. Say what you need to say, and don't let guilt change your mind this time. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than usual. I had made that trip hundreds of times before, but this time, every familiar landmark, the park where I'd learned to ride a bike, the old grocery store my mom used to take me to, felt different. As if everything from my childhood had turned into a backdrop for Betrayal. When I pulled into their driveway, I noticed the new SUV gleaming under the sun. The paint was spotless, the tires brand new. The small, modest home I'd grown up in was now adorned with new curtains, fresh paint, and what looked like a patio renovation in progress. All of it, every last bit, paid for with my money. My mother opened the door before I could knock. Her smile was polite but uneasy. Amira! What a surprise. Is Dad home? I asked, walking past her before she could answer. He was in the living room, reading the newspaper, dressed neatly as always. Oh, Amira, he said, adjusting his glasses. We weren't expecting you. I noticed, I said, setting my bag down. My voice was calm, almost too calm. The kind of calm that comes when anger is past its boiling point. My mother crossed her arms. If this is about last night's call, it is, I cut in. And we're not going to dance around it anymore. I took a deep breath, meeting their eyes. I want you to tell me the truth. Did you use the money I sent to buy a car and a property? My father sighed heavily, folding his newspaper. We didn't use it for that. We invested it. There's a difference. I blinked in disbelief. Invested? Dad, I sent that money because you said you couldn't afford medicine. You said you were behind on bills. You told me you were struggling. My mother's voice rose. We were. We had been struggling for years before that. You think we don't deserve to enjoy ourselves now? You think after all the sacrifices we made raising you, we should live like beggars? Her words hit like a slap. You made me believe you were still struggling, so I'd keep sending money, I said quietly. You lied. You let me work myself sick while you were living comfortably. My father leaned forward, his tone turning cold. Amira, you're making a big deal out of nothing. We didn't steal from you. You gave that money willingly. Yes, I said, my voice trembling, because I trusted you. The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother finally looked away, her lips pressed tight. For a moment, I thought I saw regret in her eyes, but it was gone just as quickly. Maybe you shouldn't have expected so much gratitude, she said. Family helps family. That's how it works. I laughed bitterly. No, family doesn't manipulate family. You didn't need help, you wanted luxury. And you didn't even have the decency to tell me the truth. My father slammed his hand on the armrest. Enough, Amira. Don't talk to your parents like that. I stood, my voice breaking. I'm done being your bank. I'm done feeling guilty for living my own life while you exploit my kindness. From now on, not a single dollar more." My mother gasped as if I'd cursed her. "You'd abandon us?" "I'm not abandoning you," I said quietly. "You abandoned my trust long ago." I turned and walked out before they could say another word. My hands were shaking, my eyes burning, but my heart, for the first time in years, felt lighter. When I got home, Rafi was waiting by the door. He didn't ask what happened. He just opened his arms and I fell into them. Sobbing, I knew what would come next. The guilt trips, the phone calls, the gossip among relatives. But I also knew this. I had finally broken free from their control, and though it hurt like hell, it was the first step toward reclaiming my life. The days after the confrontation felt eerily quiet. Too quiet. For years, my phone had buzzed constantly with my parents' messages, requests for help, reminders to send the next payment, small talk that always circled back to money. Now. Silence. At first, I thought maybe they were reflecting, maybe deep down they knew they'd gone too far. But by the third day, that hope shattered when I received the first call. It was my aunt, her tone sharp and accusing. "Amira, what have you done to your parents? Your mother is in tears. She says you yelled at them and cut them off completely. After all they've done for you?" I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tightly. "Auntie, did they also tell you about the money? About the lies?" "What lies?" She scoffed. "They said you've become selfish since marrying that man, that you forgot where you came from." There it was, the script they'd written, and the family had already memorized. I didn't try to defend myself. I just said, "Believe what you want," and hung up. That was only the beginning. Within a week, word had spread through the entire extended family. Cousins stopped replying to my messages. My uncle, who'd always been close to me, sent a curt text. "You should be ashamed. Your parents sacrificed everything for you." At the same time, my parents started posting on social media, not directly about me, but in ways that everyone knew were meant for me. Pictures of them looking sad, captions like, "When children forget their parents, the heart breaks quietly." The comments poured in, sympathy, outrage, pity. Everyone saw them as victims, and me? I was painted as the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her poor, loving parents. At home, I tried to stay strong for Rafi and Lena, but it wasn't easy. There were nights when I broke down in the kitchen, asking myself over and over, did I do the right thing? Rafi would sit beside me, calm and steady. "You did," he'd say every time. "You gave them everything, love, money, time. They chose greed over gratitude. That's not on you." Lena, too young to understand the details, only sensed the tension. One evening she asked softly, "Mom, why don't Nana and Nani call anymore?" I swallowed hard. "Because they're upset, sweetheart. But that's not your fault." She nodded, thinking it over. "Can we still love them?" Tears filled my eyes. "Yes," I whispered. "We can still love them, but we don't have to let them hurt us." Weeks passed. Slowly, the calls from relatives stopped when they realized I wasn't going to back down. The silence that once scared me began to feel peaceful. For the first time, there were no guilt messages. No financial pressure, no manipulation hiding behind affection. And as the noise faded, I started to see things clearly. My parents hadn't just taken my money, they'd taken my peace, my confidence, my sense of balance. They'd made me believe love had to be proven through sacrifice, but it did and single quotes. Love built on guilt isn't love, it's control. One Sunday morning, while Rafi and Lena were making pancakes, I sat down with my bank app open. The savings balance was higher than I'd seen in years. I felt a mix of pride and sadness. That money could have gone toward my daughter's future all along. I decided then it would. I started a college fund for Lena, the kind of security I thought I was giving my parents. When I clicked confirm transfer, I felt a quiet, satisfying peace. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. A few months later, my mother texted for the first time since the confrontation. Just one line, "We forgive you." No apology? No acknowledgement. Just that As if I were the one who needed forgiveness, I stared at it for a long time, then deleted the message. I didn't need forgiveness from people who'd never admitted their wrongs. What I needed was peace, and I finally had it. 6 months had passed since I stopped sending the money. 6 months of silence, whispers, and rumors, but also 6 months of peace. I didn't realize how much emotional weight I'd been carrying until it was gone. For years, every paycheck had come with guilt. Guilt if I didn't send enough. Guilt if I dared to spend on myself. Guilt if I ever questioned my parents' needs. Now, that weight was gone, replaced by something new. Space. Space to breathe. Space to live. It wasn't easy at first. I'd wake up some mornings and instinctively reach for my phone, ready to check in on my parents or send a transfer. Then I'd remember. Then the ache would come, sharp, familiar, and heavy, but each time, it hurt a little less. Rafi noticed the change in me before I did. You smile more now, he said one evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. Even when you're tired, it's different. It's real. I smiled faintly. I guess I finally stopped trying to buy love. He reached over and took my hand. You never had to buy it. You just gave it to the wrong people. His words sank deep, quiet, but true. Lena's 8th birthday came around, and this time we threw her a small picnic at the park. Nothing extravagant, just close friends, cupcakes, and laughter. As she ran through the grass, her laughter ringing through the air. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, pure, uncomplicated joy. When she came running back to me, cheeks flushed and eyes bright, she threw her arms around my neck and said, "Mom, this is the best birthday ever." That one sentence meant more than anything I'd ever heard from my parents. It wasn't about how much I spent or what I gave. It was about being there, present, honest, and whole. Later that evening, as we packed up, Lena handed me a small paper heart she'd cut out herself. Inside, in her crooked handwriting, she'd written, "Thank you for loving me, even when you're tired." I swallowed hard, trying not to cry. It struck me then how different love looked when it was real. Love wasn't measured by money or sacrifices that drained your soul. Real love was quiet, patient, and mutual. It didn't demand, manipulate, or guilt. It grew freely, like my daughter's laughter in that park. A week later, I got another text from my mother. This time it said, "Your cousin told me you went on a trip." Must be nice when some people don't think about their parents. I read it once, then deleted it without replying, not out of anger this time, but out of acceptance. I finally understood something. You can't change people who benefit from your guilt. My parents weren't interested in reconciliation. They were interested in control, and I was done giving it to them. The following month, Rafi and I opened a small savings account for family experiences, weekend getaways, Lena's activities, things that built memories instead of resentment. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about reclaiming what mattered most: joy, peace, and time. As I looked at my husband and daughter laughing in the kitchen one night, I realized that I hadn't lost a family. I had simply drawn the boundary that protected the one I built. For years, I believed being a good daughter meant giving until I had nothing left. But that belief was wrong. Being a good daughter, a good person, means giving from love, not fear, helping with an open heart, not under pressure, and knowing when to stop giving doesn't make you selfish. It makes you strong. When I tucked Lena into bed that night, she whispered sleepily, "Mom, will Nana and Nani ever come to visit again?" I brushed her hair back and smiled softly. "Maybe someday," I said. "But until then, we'll keep loving them from far away, and we'll keep loving each other right here." As she drifted to sleep, I whispered the words I wish someone had told me years ago. Real love doesn't ask you to lose yourself to prove it. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it.